on September 11th, 2001. This is not the end of our war against al-Qaeda, but it is certainly a moment that many Americans will relish.
Well, it's a day for celebrating the defeat of the greatest symbol of this adversary. When bin Laden declared war on the United States in the 1990s, part of his premise was that if you hit America hard, we'll run away. He cited the Americans in Beirut who left after our Marine barracks were hit, and Americans who left Somalia after they were dragged through the streets there. And he said, you hit the Americans hard and they'll basically pull back. And if there's one thing that bin Laden and the whole world has seen in these last 10 years, it's that that's not right. That narrative of American weakness, that in the end we'll get tired and give up, has been shown to be wrong. The persistence of this effort to get him, I mean, if we go into the details of how they got this intel and worked it over the last 8 years, it's just an amazing story. So it's clearly a story of people who just were determined to get justice. The President, I thought, voiced that very well in his remarks last night. Justice has been done.
David, the other aspect of this, I think, is that it's a reminder to the American audiences and people everywhere that how unconventional this war is. In fact, any progress that we do make is made on the basis of very hard-won intelligence and operations like this that are developed in computer rooms and other places, and then they're inserted and they have a specific mission taken out. It's not a big frontline war. This is the kind of war that has been going on for some time, and you have these kind of victories because of the coordination of the intel community, special ops, and the general presence of the military. And we need to be reminded of that.
I think you put your finger on it. Let me give you a concrete example in this case. The CIA got a nickname for one of bin Laden's couriers in interrogation of high-value targets. They're very controversial interrogations involving enhanced interrogation techniques, let's make no bones about it. In the 2002 to 2004 range, it took them about 4 years to figure out who that nickname might really be. They finally got the true name in 2007, and then they had to figure out where on earth was this, literally, where on earth was this person? They used every tool the intelligence agencies have. It's in that period, I'm told, that the Pakistanis actually were helpful before we, condemned the Pakistanis to having known all about this and hid it from us. I'm told in that period, after 2007, they helped us figure out where this guy might be, where this courier for bin Laden might be living. Turned out he was living in this compound with his brother, and there was another family, a third mystery family there with them, and that's how we got on the trail.
And Mika, how remarkable that intel that they received in 2004 on the name of a courier. The intel community worked for 4 years figuring out who actually that nickname was. And my gosh, so what, 7 years later?
It's amazing. 7
years later, intel received in 2004 led to last night. And that is how complicated, and David Ignatius knows this, that's how complicated this this job is.
I'd also like to talk to David about our relationship with Pakistan, which Tom Poker brought up, which this complicates things even more, and we can talk to my father about that. I just got an email from Liz Cheney with her father's statement, and it reads in part this. At this moment, this is former Vice President Dick Cheney, when bin Laden has been brought to justice, we especially remember the sacrifice of the young Americans who've paid the ultimate price in defense of the nation, as well as the nearly 3,000 Americans who lost their lives on 9/11. Al-Qaeda remains a dangerous enemy. Though bin Laden is dead, the war goes on. We must remain vigilant, especially now, and we must continue to support our men and women in uniform who are fighting on the front lines of this war every day. And with that, I want to bring in NBC News terrorism analyst and former member of the U.S. National Security Council, Roger Cressy. And Roger, I wonder, as we have celebrations in the streets of Washington and New York City where the attacks happened on 9/11, if there is concern that perhaps this opens a new door in terms of our security.
Well, Mika, this is a tremendous triumph, and this is personal for many people. It's personal for me because I was in the White House the morning of 9/11. counterterrorism was my portfolio up until that day and then in the weeks thereafter. So I remember standing in the Situation Room watching as things unfolded and thinking, how long until we get bin Laden in the leadership? It'll probably be a matter of days. It might be a matter of weeks. Nobody could have predicted this long. But it is still nonetheless an incredibly important day. I think to your question about whether or not the threat has evolved or we have a greater threat, Al-Qaeda, we need to keep in mind, Al-Qaeda has been coming after us not only since 9/11, but well before it. So the sustained operational tempo that the U.S. counterterrorism community has been operating under, in part to get bin Laden, is going to continue as it continues to dismantle other elements of the Al-Qaeda network and to disrupt potential plots and operational planning. So that sustained effort continues. Now, I joke with people before who said, well, we can't kill bin Laden. That might increase the threat of attack against us. And I say to them, well, what's Al-Qaeda going to do? They're going to come after us, which is what they have been doing already. Mm-hmm. So we can't engage in what some people call a policy of self-deterrence, worrying about the potential downside. This was the right thing to do. It has been the right thing to do since 9/11. And as David said, it's a lot of hard work, but anybody who's been in the counterterrorism business will tell you, you got to have a little bit of luck, too. And we got lucky. And that type of luck was translated into good work and ultimately to a successful operation.
And David Ignatius, with Roger here, let's talk briefly about the intel community. As long, you talk to people in the intel community and they will tell you that the most dangerous job in the world over the past 10 years has been being the number 3 in Al-Qaeda. And at the same time, though, because we've probably been through, probably killed 7 or 8 number threes. And at one point I said, why do we keep doing that? And they said, well, things may actually get complicated if we get number 1 and number 2. Well, we got number 1, but let us, for Americans that have not followed this closely, guys, let us talk about number 2, who anybody that knows anything about Al-Qaeda will tell you that number 2 has actually been the guy that has been running the operations over the past decade or so.
Ayman Zawahiri, the number 2, is the operations planner. He's often seen as the more dangerous in terms of the guy who's going to put people on the ground who will take Americans out. I would note one interesting thing. It's not the most important thing that happened yesterday, but in terms of Zawahiri's life insurance policy, it is. We grabbed a lot of intelligence in this mansion where Osama bin Laden was hiding. I don't know all the stuff that we got. People won't tell me, and they shouldn't. But we got a lot of stuff. And I think people think now is the time to step on the gas. Zawahiri's going to be in a panic. He may want to move wherever he is. These are the moments when there's a big event that people move in ways that make them vulnerable, especially when we've got some new intelligence.
And Roger Cressy, what David Ignatius just said, all of my contacts in the intel community said the same thing, except they didn't say step on the gas. They said, now we want to step on Zawahiri's neck. This is the Egyptian who, for those that don't know about him, this is a guy who was hardened after the assassination of Sadat in Egyptian prisons. And how ironic this is all coming together at the same time that Egypt is moving forward after the Sadat Mubarak reign of the past 35 years.
Now, Joe, you're right. And I believe that all the events we've seen in the Middle East have been extremely bad news this year for Al-Qaeda, and it really culminates today. Zawahiri is very important. He was the theoretician. He would write on a regular basis. But he is not the spiritual leader. He is not the glue that kept Al-Qaeda together before. So the strategic opportunity this presents for the United States is that Al-Qaeda certainly has contingency plans for how to continue to operate post-bin Laden, but there is no one leader who can be cohesive to bring all these disparate groups together. The Saudis, the Egyptians, the Yemenis, the Uzbeks, all the various groups that have supported and pledged bayat to bin Laden may not do the same to Zawahiri or others. You talk about Al-Qaeda's number 3. The joke was, well, we keep killing them because we can kill them. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not because we were putting 1 or 2 to the side. It's because we could kill them. So certainly there's an opportunity here. It's twofold. David talks about the intelligence, the exploitation phase of what we gathered in that compound could lead to some serious opportunities for us. And then the second is to watch the chatter, watch the movement of individuals to see if we create another opportunity from this that leads us to Zawahiri or other members of the senior operational command and control. And we've got to continue to focus on that and pound them in the process.
Mike?
You know, David and Roger as well, one of the things that occurs, I think, to a lot of people that hasn't been discussed at great length here this morning is the fact that, you know, over the past several years, Al-Qaeda seems to have become a franchise operation rather than a central core operation. And what impact the both of you think this might have on those various franchises in different countries around the world? And the other element that I don't think can be discussed enough is that despite all of our technological expertise with satellites, with electronic surveillance, this came down to following someone on a motorbike. This came down to human intelligence on the ground. And finally, perhaps we are beefing up that aspect of our intelligence gathering system. David first.
Well, first on the question of Al-Qaeda without bin Laden, it is a franchise operation. You know, what's KFC without the Colonel? It's not the same business. But there are counterterrorism analysts in our government who have worried that as you hit Al-Qaeda central hard, what you'll get is a dispersed movement that is not centrally coordinated. We have a lot of freelancers who go off on their own. To some extent, the Yemen operation, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, shows signs of being that. So we need to be careful. This dispersed Al-Qaeda, I don't think will be able to pose the danger of threat of massive spectaculars like we saw on September 11. But there'll be a lot of little operations. There's going to be a lot of angry people this morning thinking of ways to settle scores. So nobody should sitting back saying, phew, that's over. That's not the correct view of this, in my view.
Yeah, and I agree with David, Mike. I think, you know, there are three circles to the Al-Qaeda phenomenon. Al-Qaeda central in the inner, Al-Qaeda's network and the franchises in the second, and then the broader Al-Qaeda movement, individuals, unrestricted free agents that aren't affiliated with a particular group. All three of them have been impacted, but in a different way because of bin Laden's death. Al-Qaeda Central continues to still have operational capability, and we're going to continue to go after it. Most recently, we had the arrests in Germany. One, if not two, of those individuals went to Al-Qaeda training camps on the Afghan-Pakistan border. So there is still a current threat there. It's the affiliates that David talked about, and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula being the most significantly operational one right now, that we still have to worry about. Who tried to attack the U.S. homeland twice in the past 12 months and nearly was successful? It wasn't Al-Qaeda Central, it was AQAP. So while bin Laden's death is important in one respect, it really doesn't impact the operational tempo of AQ, of the network. And then that last circle of individuals, the unrestricted free agents, you know, some of them might try and do something on their own right now in response to bin Laden's death. Others may think, all right, this is the time where I want to start planning to become operational. So you look at these three circles, and the U.S. government's going to have a different approach to all three of them, Mike.